do things in the workplace that cause mayhem, that cause division, that causes the company's value to go down, to cause the reputation of the company to go down, that shows that you're not putting in max effort, then you're probably going to get consequences at work. Now, with the coronavirus, is a completely different situation. That's really no one's fault, and we're getting some pretty bad consequences for the spread of the disease. But in general, and during most times, this is what happens in the real world. And so as we think about consequences that we do as parents, typically speaking, the kind of consequences that we give to our kids are lectures. We sometimes, and if you know your kid well, you know the signs of when they are tuning out, and then we get upset when they tune out, and then we start to elevate our voice, we start getting a bit more forceful, and then now we're really escalating. Or sometimes we will have an outburst, and either the kid will shut down, or they'll start crying, or they will fight back. Sometimes the consequence will be, okay, you're grounded. And sometimes when we say you're grounded, the kid will say, well, how come you grounded me for this time, but then last time, I didn't get grounded. That doesn't seem consistent. And then you're now arguing about the consequence. So as you can see, the way that we normally do consequences is not super effective. It's tiring, it's confusing, it sends mixed messages, and the kids find loopholes. And that's why this system is an upgrade from the typical ways that we do these consequences. So speaking of outbursts, if you show the next, if you see slide number, let's see, 2 slides after this one, that's on the screen right now. Okay, I don't know whether we'll get there. There might be some lag, but I'll ask you, here we go, thank you. Speaking of outbursts, if you think about the last time that you, attending the seminar, you were the recipient of someone's tirade. So whether it was a boss, whether it was a parent, an in-law, whether it was maybe the last time you remembered was when you were an adolescent and your parent just blew up on you. How did that foster relationship with you? Because what that person did might have done the job in either shutting you down and making you stop doing what you're doing. But when we're talking about fostering relationship, going back to the 2 verses that this all hinges upon, does this promote dignity? Does this provoke children? Did it make you feel loved unconditionally when this authority figure just blew up on you? Well, typically the answer is no. But if we're honest, we will do this to our children. It's just kind of an automatic reaction. But we need to understand that it has an effect. And if we do this often enough, it has maybe long-term effects. It makes them either fear our presence. It makes them want to shrink away from us. It might make them feel that we are less than, that they would think less of us when they eventually become our age. So we definitely don't want to be continuing to do things that that on one hand may do the job of shutting the behavior down, but at the same time, the other edge of the sword is really ruining a relationship. So, so the alternative, next slide, would be, and again, this isn't a perfect analogy, but this is just one way to think about it, is that when we speak to them about the rules and about consequences and all that kind of stuff, that we try to stay as level-headed as possible, almost like a policeman who pulls you over and they just ask you for your license and registration. typically this policeman is not going to have um, a lot of emotion behind it. If they do, then they're not really doing their job. But typically, they're just going to be very flat, license and registration. Or, customer service agents, they're also taught not to get too emotional when they're talking to a customer. So that's, of course, there's going to be exceptions to the rule, but in general, we want to be as level-headed when speaking to the kids as possible. And yeah, if we can't handle our anger, then perhaps we are the ones who need to get counseling, not the kids. We are the ones who have the more developed brain than the kids do. We are the ones who have the more capacity to handle our emotions. Even when we think that the kids are provoking us, we are the older ones. We are the more mature ones, and we are the ones who should be able to handle our own emotions. Okay, so let's get to let's go 2 slides forward, and there are some exceptions as to like there are certain situations where these rules by Matthew Johnson may not apply in your home. So the slide that I'm referring to says reasons why these rules may fail in your home. The next one after this is when the parents don't, there you go, thank you. It's when the parents not really willing to put in the work. And again, there's no judgment on that. It's just, there are just some parents who can't do it. They don't have the time to put in the work, and that's okay. Or there's an unwillingness to comply on the parents' part, as in, like, they can't see eye to eye with one another. Sometimes there may be a learning disability. The kid may have some special needs. There may be poor mental health. If there is addictions in the household, they're going to need something beyond just rules. They might need inpatient treatment. They might need some specialized treatment to really help out with the addictions. If there is abuse going on in the home, this is not going to be a great system for them. They also need some special attention there. So these are some of the reasons why rules such as these might not work in your household. So if any of these apply to you, then I mean, you can, by all means, please listen to the rest of the seminar. But yeah, you might want to think twice about implementing these, and might go in a different direction on how to help out your specific household. Okay, so next slide, please. There are 3 main materials that you will need. So number 1 is you're going to need a deck of playing cards. Let's see. So a typical deck has what, 52 cards or so. So that's actually perfect, because we are going to need around 50 cards. If you don't want to use playing cards, you can use index cards that you just write on. But the reason why I prefer playing cards is because they're way more durable than index cards are. Index cards easily rip, they fold over, and so yeah, you might need to rewrite those rules often. But with the playing cards, yeah, you won't have to rewrite them at all. You're also going to need some plastic tokens. So we found some plastic tokens that were lying around at my wife's childhood home. But you can probably find plastic tokens at, on eBay or Amazon, and you're going to want to color code them, so that if you have like 3 kids, you're going to want 3 different colors for each child. And when I say many plastic tokens, that means, like, I don't know, at least, maybe at least like 50 each. And they don't have to be big. They could be the small kind. Maybe 100 to be safe. But But yeah, these you can find these pretty cheaply on Amazon or eBay. And then these the Avery printing labels, if you are going to be using the playing cards, because you'll just go ahead and have a master list of the rules on your computer file, and you can just print it out. And if you ever destroy a card, then you can always easily print out another label and apply it to the card. Okay, so those are the materials that you need. And if you go to the next slide, so this is where we really get into the meat of it. This is where we're going to start creating the family rules. So these, okay, like I mentioned before, the parents need to be in agreement. And if the parents cannot be in agreement about what the rules are, then you might want to press pause on, not on the seminar, but just press pause on really thinking about doing these rules. And you might want to consider maybe couples counseling, because for this to really work, both parents must be in agreement. And so there might be some philosophical differences that need to be ironed out, or maybe some past resentments that are impeding your ability to speak fairly to one another. So, and this happens quite a lot. So I do recommend couples counseling if you can't be in agreement. And you are going to get input from the kids about the rules, but you as the parents have the final say. These rules will apply at all times in all locations. And so that's why these cards that you're gonna, the index cards or the playing cards, you will basically be carrying these everywhere that you go. You could put them in your purse, you could leave them in your car when you go out. You can have multiple sets so that you don't need to, remember to bring them. They'll always be there, either in your car or when you travel. And these rules, this is where some parents say, "Oh, I didn't plan for this." These rules apply to every member of the family, and there are some age-related exceptions, such as those who can drive, maybe when bedtime is. But you'll find that these rules are really about behavior. They're about communication. They're about the things that these are like character building things that apply to every person. So that's one of the reasons why kids really like these rules, because they like seeing that the parents are reducing their hypocrisy and they are in the same boat as them. So that immediately kind of promotes a buy-in from the kids. And if the rule is not written down, it is not enforceable. And so that you need to be very mindful of that. And I'll show you in a little bit how to, like, what you should do when a kid does something that is very disruptive or something, or harmful, but it's not actually in the written rules. There's a way to handle that situation. Okay, so you might be thinking, what are some examples of family rules? So I have quite a few to show you, and we'll go through them quickly. And I'm not going to go through all of them for the sake of time. But if you could show the next slide. So never mind the numbers in parentheses on the left. I'll explain that later. But just notice that there are numbers in parentheses on the left. But these are some examples of family rules. Such as obeying all city, state, federal laws, not interrupting others when they're talking, treating people and animals with respect, which means no verbal abuse, no physical abuse. This includes the parents, right? Obeying the school rules and obeying the church rules. So, number 8 says no inappropriate facial expressions or body gestures. It's kind of funny if you think about it, but it's really important, because what this is doing is this is really helping kids from an early age not to become passive aggressive. And man, what a wonderful society we would have if we have less and less passive aggressive behavior. Um, and no stealing, parental permission. These are all just, good examples. Next slide, please. Let's see. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, no destruction of property. No playing with matches or lighters unless your parent gives you permission. Number 22, participating in family meetings and devotions, and no wisecracks in the middle of it. That just gets really disruptive and distracting. It could be irreverent as well. Next slide. Yeah, like in the car, like if the kids are fighting inside the car or playing inside the car, that's really disruptive, even dangerous to the driver. Number 39, chores. We'll talk about chores in a bit. And there are some rewards and consequences for grades. And yeah, number 45, no tampering with the cards. That's going to cause a major infraction. So because you have these PDFs, you could read these later, but this is just an example for you to see what kinds of family rules have been written down as examples. And I want to give you a chance to write down immediately as you thought about these rules and what would be good for your own family. I want you to write down one rule, whether it's on your computer or on a notepad, that you think would be a good rule to have in your family. Okay, so why don't you take 1 minute just to write down one rule that you think would be a good family rule for for all the members of your family. And if you would send me, if any of you are willing, send me a private message in the chat telling me what you wrote down. And I'd love to see some of these and share some of these anonymously. Just give an example of what other CCSE members are thinking of as far as family rules. All right, good. They're coming in now. Great. Okay, so one person said to try, the emphasis is on try, to think of others before yourself. I like that. Okay, another person said no phones present at meal times, right? Very clear, very, that's easily identifiable and enforceable because you either have your phone there on your table or not. Another person said no fighting, which includes no raising of voices or screaming. Okay, very good. Another person said no playing or running on the stairs. Oh yeah, that's dangerous. No touching other people's stuff. Yeah, these are all very very good, clear examples of things that would reduce chaos and would promote more peace in the home. So thank you everyone for contributing those. So you get the hang of it. So you can always refer back to this PDF and think about other rules. And trust me, you do not have to do this perfectly in the beginning. You just have to kind of start from somewhere and you amend as you go. There is a lot of grace, a lot of slack here, but this is just trying to conceptualize a new way of handling the quest for peace in the household. Okay, so the rules are fundamental to this system, and alongside the rules are the challenge of trying to implement a chores system in the household. So um, if you show the next slide, please, maybe the 2 slides after this. Perfect, thank you. So there's going to be a daily chores list for every member, right? Not just for the kids, but every member. And some of you might be thinking, but I as the mom do all the chores, or I as the dad do all the chores. Well, that's going to change. If you implement the system, that all is going to change. And if any of you are OCD or perfectionist, that also is going to change because um, uh, that might be the reason why you do all the chores yourself, is because you don't trust other people by, you don't trust other people doing the job as well as you do. But that is not a great attitude to have when it comes to chores, because we really want to have everyone's cooperation, and not everyone is going to do it as well as you do. So that's something that you're going to have to gradually let go of, loosen your grip on, is the perfectionistic mentality when it comes to chores. But for there to be a real cohesive effort, a cohesive spirit in the home, there needs to be a daily chores list for every member, including inspection time. And this negates the need to nag, and I'll explain that in a second. So a daily chores list as well as a weekly chores list. What am I going to do every single day for the maintenance of the house, and what will I do once per week for the maintenance of the house? Those are bigger jobs. And it could be monthly if you want to. This is all really up to you, but according to Matthew Johnson, this is just kind of what he came up with, daily and weekly. So if you show the next slide, these are some examples. And mind you, Matthew Johnson comes from Alaska. Okay, so some of these things you're going to find that are like about wood chopping and things like that. So you don't have to really pay too much attention to those, but take a look at some of these. If you've ever scolded your kids for not finishing their meals before, such and such. These are daily chores: eating breakfast before you go to school or before you go out with friends on the weekend, making the bed, hygiene stuff, right? Or if you have pets, have the kids be the ones that feed them and water them or walk them. Cleaning dishes immediately after. You can have your own system regarding that. Next slide, please. These are some examples of weekly chores. So, vacuum, we don't vacuum every week. If you have wood floors, you don't Swiffer every week, sorry, every day. But, it might be something that you want to do every week. Or taking the garbage cans out. Whoever is on cooking duty, they have it, by such and such. And then here's the wood example, right? Is total Alaska. So these are things that are bigger jobs, and that you would have to consider inspection time once per week. So if these serve as any sort of inspiration for you, take some time right now to think about one daily chore that you think your kids can handle, and also one weekly chore that your kids can handle. And the challenge here is a chore that you think that they can handle that they're not doing already, okay? So if you can think about one of each example, a daily and a weekly, and write that down. And again, if there are any volunteers who would like to share that with me in the chat, I will share those anonymously as a form of inspiration for other people listening in on this. Okay, so here's a question. How young of an age can you start implementing chores? Fantastic question. You know, I would say like I would say like 5 or 6, and giving like a ton of leeway as to like how well they do it. Um, Definitely once they are getting into like age 7 or 8, they should be well on their way in doing chores. But 5 or 6 might be just a nice intro to chores for them, and it could be something really simple. Let me try to think off the top of my head. Maybe like uh, maybe like after they're done with their meal, if they have like a plastic plate or a plastic cup, that they bring the plastic plate and cup to the sink, something like that. That could be just a easy, safe way for them to understand that chores are important for the family. So it's a great question. Here's some examples. So yeah, water the plants weekly, good. Um, Folding your own laundry, great. And putting the laundry away neatly, fantastic. Yeah, someone says, take the plate to the sink immediately after eating, after each meal time, very good. Taking dirty clothes to the hamper every time that you change. Again, this is really good examples of, not leaving dirty clothes on the floor and on the bed and stuff, but putting them into the hamper. And here's a question. What happens if we have a special event that interferes with chore completion? Okay, fantastic question. I will get to that, so hold on. And that's going to be in a slide upcoming. So really, really good question. Thanks everyone for the examples. These are really, really good and hopefully inspirational to the other members listening. So if you show the next slide, what we're going to be doing is you're just going to create an inspection time. So some of you talked about putting, dirty clothes in into the hamper, or maybe watering the plants on a weekly basis. So what you're going to be doing is you're just going to designate a, a a daily time. Probably is going to be in the evening sometime. Or if it's going to be a weekly thing, maybe sometime on a Sunday evening, Sunday morning, whatever you want to do. But all the parents need to do is say, this is what the rule is, and by this time, it needs to be done. And what you do is at that time, you go and you inspect whether those things were done or not. And if they did it, great, they get a reward. If they did not, then they get a consequence. And again, these rewards and consequences are written down. So there's no trying to think on the fly. Let me think. Okay, you're grounded. Or you have to sit in a corner. Or, you don't have to think spontaneously about what they're going to do. These rules and consequences and rewards are all written down in advance. And you can even bring the kid with you to the posted sheet of paper that says, okay, Junior, so it wasn't done by this time. Do you know what the consequence is? Yes, Dad, I have to, I don't know, uh, mow the lawn, whatever it is. And so, yes, that's correct. And so they realize that their infraction brought upon their consequence. It's not you arbitrarily thinking of what needs to happen. They then realize that that uh, they brought that upon themselves. No more nagging. It's like if the inspection time is 7:30 p.m., you're not going to go to them at 4:30 and say, remember to do this, don't forget to do that. That kind of stuff provokes them. They say, I know that. It's on the rule sheet. You don't have to tell me that, right? So you don't have to say anything. And at 7:30, all you do is go and check it. And here's the thing. As the parents also have their chores to do, the children will also inspect the parents' chores at the designated time. And if they find that you did not do it, then you will have to do the consequence that is also written on the rule sheet. Okay, so this is terrifying for a lot of parents, because it's like, no, I don't want to parent like this. I want this to be just, I want the rules just to be for the kids. But if you really think about it, that is a very, it's a very aggravating thing for the kids to witness, that there is a perceived inequality in the family, and there's nothing that sours the spirit more than silent suffering, silent inequality. So this is something that really increases the buy-in for the kids. And yes, it's more work for the parents, especially in the beginning, to come up with all these things. And yes, it increases accountability for the parents, but it really exponentially increases the peace in the home as well. Okay, so let's see here. Where do I want to go? Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. And I still do remember that one question about what do you do if there's a special event? So I will get there. But right now we're going to talk about the good habit cards. Okay, so this is where you use either the index cards or the deck of cards, the playing cards. So you want to create a list, first of all, on a piece of paper or in your notebook. Good habit cards. In other words, good habits cards are consequences, but we don't really want to call them consequences because it sounds so punitive. Good habits cards are things that they need to do. That's what the consequence is. But what they're doing isn't, it's not painful, like, you know, getting whacked on the legs with corporal punishment. It's not, you know, getting slapped on the wrists, or it's not getting a verbal lashing. These are things that that is good to teach the kids anyway. And what we're doing is we're giving them repetitions. We're giving them reps from an early age on things that would be good for their overall health moving forward. So they should be short. They should not take longer than 30 minutes. I think on average, most of these chores take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. Or sorry, not chores, good habits will take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, maybe even shorter. They are chore-like, or they are in the form of some sort of exercise, like jumping jacks. It could be spiritual, such as interceding for someone's health, or interceding for someone who's in a tough spot. It could be benevolent, such as donating something. So these are all good habits, and you're going to want to separate the cards for older and younger kids. So if you have one kid who is 17, one kid who is 11, one kid who is 5, the good habits are going to be different for those kids. Again, there's a lot of work, but once you do it, you just kind of coast. These tasks, yes, these are different than the daily and weekly chores. So so that's why you want to put a lot of like the exercise stuff or the spiritual stuff or the benevolent stuff inside the good habits cards, and not as many chores in the good habits cards. You also add 5 wild cards, where if you pick that wild card, and you're going to be picking these cards randomly, and I'll explain that in a second. The person must do what the other family members decide they need to do. And then 5 grace cards, which means if you draw that card, you don't have to do anything. Like, there's no actual habit that you need to do for drawing that card. Okay, so I'll show you some examples. If you show the next slide. Okay, so for example, scrubbing the tub or scrubbing the tile. This is a longer task. This is going to take about maybe 30 minutes, maybe less, depending on how fast you are. But this is different than the weekly chore. And for those of you who are perfectionistic, you really need to take a deep breath and allow them to be newbies at these tasks. Now, you can teach them what to do, but I urge you not to be perfectionistic about this, because what we're really trying to implement is the spirit of, um, of accountability, the spirit of doing things that they should get good at eventually in their adult life. But like a 10-year-old kid, how good will they be at scrubbing things? So we need to give them a lot of grace and just applaud their effort. Um, uh, Cleaning the refrigerator, this is probably more for like the older kids, like taking the shelves out, wiping them down, putting them back in. Cleaning out the freezer, again, this is probably more for the older kids. Vacuuming the living room, this is someone that a 10-year-old can do. And again, does not have to be perfect, but just they need reps. They need to start very imperfectly in the beginning, and they get better over time. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a chance for you to think about 3 good habits. Oh, sorry, you know what? I think this slide came a little bit too prematurely for me. If you go to the next slide after this. Great, thanks. Okay, so these are also, some of these are chores, but yeah, as you'll see, some of these are not chores. So for example, take a look at 39. Write a 1-page essay on why you should not have broken the rule that you just broke. Now, maybe smaller kids won't do this. This is more for like, I don't know, 12-year-olds or so. But writing a 1-page essay doesn't need to be, intro, body, conclusion, but just writing out an entire page of why you should not have broken the rule that you just broke. Look at 51, playing a board game with 1 or more family members. You don't want to play a long game like Monopoly or Risk, but like it could be like a game of Uno. It could be a game of Tiddlywinks, I don't know, Candyland. Reading a book to a younger sibling, 57. I really like number 60, give everyone in the family a genuine hug. Again, this is not about punishment. This is about forming good habits in the kids. And yes, they are required to do this as the consequence, but you'll find that when we implement this one with our daughter, or when any of us has to draw this card, and we give that person in the family a genuine hug, everything just sort of melts. All the tension, all the anger just sort of subsides, and it's a real bonding time. So that's another example of a good habits card. And the next one, please. '61, say one nice thing to everyone in the family. I like that one. '62, this is a good habit. You write down 3 things that you like about yourself. Okay, you're just basically agreeing with God that these are ways in which you specifically are made in His image. So this is not about vanity or bragging. This is about you agreeing with God about ways that you are that you have strengths, that you have value, that you are precious, and 3 things that you want to change about yourself. And this is about self-bashing. This is just, I really want to improve in these areas. This is a really good habit to have, even just as adults. So this is one of my favorites. Let's see, 66, like you could say, listen to classical music, listen to maybe a Christian song. You can memorize a verse in number 70, selected by the parent, and you repeat it out loud. So if you go 2 slides back, now that you have a sense of what the different good habits can look like, thank you. So why don't you take a moment to write down maybe 1 or 2 good habits, either that you liked, that you could choose it from this from these lists, or you have an original one. and go ahead and write that down, and then I will anonymously share some of these. And I just got a message. Yeah. So anonymously, someone whose initials are HK and the last name is Kim and the first name is Harold, said that Sunny likes to sing too much at home, and I don't like listening to that though. Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad I could share that one anonymously. Let's see, here's a good question. I'm planning to go over this already. What does the yes, yes, the question about the numbers in the parentheses. I will be sharing that in a moment. So yes, thank you for that question. All right, so if you have written down a good habit that you have thought of, go ahead and share those habits in the chat privately. Here's a good question. What if you get resistance with the good habit? Yes, fantastic question. I will be sharing about that as well. Good question. So let's see some examples of good habits. Yes, one person said, we do like the idea of writing down 3 things that you like about yourself and 3 things that you want to change. Yeah, I like that one a lot. Yeah, another person really likes saying one nice thing to say to each member of the family. Yes, yes, I do agree. Someone shared something about Wani. Don't know whether I'll share that. Okay, one person shared, yes, helping a sibling with a chore or with their homework. Yeah, great one. Good. Okay. Yes, so I think you guys get the idea. You could be creative with these habits, and again, these are habits that are not only for the kids to be doing, but these are habits for anyone in the household to be doing. And when it is age specific, yes, you're going to have to do more of the front end work of trying to figure out, which types of things would apply for a younger person and which for an older. But trust me, if you put in that front end work, a lot of it later on is coasting. So I hope that you can be inspired to do that front end work. Okay, so if you do 3 slides after this, where it says almost complete. Thank you. Okay, so all must complete the good habit card before doing anything fun. In essence, a person is grounded until the card is completed. And the exceptions are things like bedtime, school, church. One person mentioned special events. I'll speak about that briefly. And then everyone is accountable for whether they are grounded or not. So yes, when it comes to, let's say, okay, I have to draw a card, and this card is something like scrubbing the bathroom. Well, yes, that does take a while, and it's like 5 minutes before you need to drive to church. So what's going to happen is that is put on hold until you come back from church. And in essence, they cannot do anything fun. They can't go on the iPad, they can't watch TV, they can't chat with their friends, they can't go outside until that chore is completed. Now, if there's a special event such as a wedding, such as, I don't know, maybe the special event is something like wedding, someone's birthday dinner, then yes, I think you're going to have to postpone that good habit card until you come back. And immediately upon coming back, you cannot do anything fun until you finish that good habit. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. Because we don't want them to be skipping out on sleep, because they have to do this stuff. And in the morning, they have to scramble to get ready for school. So basically when they come home from school at, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, yeah, they can't do anything fun until this good habit is done. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so you need to accept the card with a neutral to a positive attitude. You cannot have resistance, as one person was asking about, and or else this happens. If they resist, they must draw double the cards each time. Now, I have seen in the past where someone resists because they feel like they didn't break the rule. Now, you want to give them a fair trial. They can explain themselves as to why they don't think that they broke the rule. But you are uh, the parent, and so you can make the final determination about whether they did break the rule or not. And what that means is that because it might be unclear for them, uh, that will probably need to be re-explained, re-clarified at the next family meeting, which I'm also going to talk about later on. But if they have a bad attitude about drawing the card, then they must draw double the cards. And they must know this prior to implementing this system. They need to know in advance that they will need to draw double if they have that bad attitude. Now, let's say you have them draw double. Give them a 10-minute cool down period, because when they're emotionally flooded like that, they're likely to keep on showing resistance, and they will have to triple and quadruple the cards, and that's just not going to go anywhere. So give them a 10-minute cool down period for them to just kind of sit, breathe, close their eyes, and when their heart rate is back down again, then go ahead and give them the chance to draw the card again. And if they resist again, then yes, you're going to need to triple or quadruple the cards. And then it's important for you parents to make sure that when you draw a card, that you don't show passive aggression, or that you don't show a lot of resistance either, but that you show in a very you model a very positive attitude when you draw the cards. Okay. All right, next slide. All right, so after you complete the good habit, especially if the good habit is like dusting the nightstand, all you do is just inspect the effort. If you see that they did like very minimal effort, then respectfully clarify how it should be done, and do it with dignity, do it with encouragement, and then have them try again. But please do not demand perfection. This is just something that that really amplifies discord in the home. You need to just see that they put in a good effort. And once it's done, whatever that card was that they drew, you put that into a separate used pile, and no more nagging, no more last word about that thing. Just kill that conversation, silence it. You don't have to talk about that infraction anymore until they do it again. And then that's when you might need to have a separate talk, maybe in a family meeting. Okay, next slide. So parents, if you do a reminder, let's say the inspection time is 7:30 and you do a reminder at 4:30, you will have to draw a card. If they break a written rule and you give them a lecture about it, instead of giving them the card like a Verizon customer service agent, you will have to draw a card. If you yell at them, you will have to draw a card. If you show like sarcastic attitude towards them, you will have to draw a card. This is just the way that it is. For there to be a lot of traction made towards peace in the home and fairness in the home, perceived fairness in the home, you're going to have to really be mindful of the ways that you have been doing it. And you're going to have to draw these cards with a positive attitude, knowing that, yes, it's true. My way of doing things is not helpful. So now, if the kids make you draw a card with a nah, 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 kind of a, like sticking it to you sort of thing, they need to draw a card as well. So we just want to make sure that the ways that we are calling each other out is done with dignity and not in a way that provokes even further, okay? All right, so we're going to go on then to the rewards. We talked about good habits, which are consequences, and we talked about the rules. But if you show the slide right before this, this should say rewards at the top. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so you're going to develop a list of rewards that meets everyone's approval and fits within your budget. If you have, let's say, 2 kids, and you know what one kid likes as a reward is not necessarily going to be what another kid likes as a reward. So do not make universal rewards. Make the rewards specific to each kid. Now, you will be sad to hear, parents, that you do not get rewards. You do not get that Gucci bag. You don't get that new video game. Basically, it's the kids who get the rewards alone, but your reward is increased peace, okay? So what you do, someone asked about the parentheses, the numbers in the parentheses on the left-hand side. You're going to assign, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The bottom one, assign the card amount next to the rule, and you show how many cards must be drawn per infraction. So if you broke the no sarcasm tone rule, and you said, you know what, that rule is a biggie in our home, and each time that you show sarcasm, that is 5 cards, then to the left of that rule, you put down the number 5 in parentheses. That just shows how many cards you need to draw. You notice that in the examples, number 1 was like breaking military law or state laws, you know, like Grand Theft Auto or shoplifting, something like that. That's an immediate 50 cards, as well as whatever the city tells you to do, like a fine of 500 or whatever it is. So big time infractions are big time cards, and smaller infractions are small amount of cards, 1 card, 2 cards, something like that. But the second bullet point, you assign a daily token value to each reward, and the grander the reward, the more tokens it costs. So for example, if one of your children wants, let's see, they want a new, they want a Supreme t-shirt. Well, Supreme is a lot of money. So you could say, sure, Junior, you can have a Supreme t-shirt, but that'll be 5,000 tokens. Okay, so they can earn their way to getting that Supreme t-shirt, but it'll take a long time. If they want something a bit more manageable, you know, they can have something like, let's say they want to be able to take the car out to hang out with their friends, or they want to go to Disneyland, you know, which is what, $150 or so. They can earn their way to getting that kind of money by getting tokens towards that reward. If it's a smaller kid, such as you know, they want to have this one pop-up book that they really like, or a particular action figure, or a doll, which is $15. Well, less tokens for that, but they still have to earn their way towards that thing. So this basically means that everything that they really want, you could say, sure, you can have that as long as you earn your way towards it, and you can assign the value towards that. So that's where you need to be very careful about how much, how you consider the value of each reward. So take a look at these examples. Again, this is from Alaska. So they say things such as ice cream parlor, roller skating. I think this is probably written back in the 90s or so. So 2 tokens for an ice cream cone, DVD rental, right? Three tokens. Having a pizza party, 5 friends, 25 tokens. And you go down the list of baseball game. I think baseball game is a lot more than that, but if they want to go to a really nice restaurant, really, really nice, like Applebee's, uh, then sure, you can have a certain amount of tokens for that. Um, and you can try to think about your own kids right now, what your kids would like. So why don't you take some time right now to think about what each of your kids would like, and uh, write down what the reward would be, and write down what you think would be a fair amount of tokens. Actually, no, hold that thought. Don't do the tokens yet. Just write down what you think that your kids would like, and then if you could share that in the chat, I can share anonymously what some people came up with. I know what I want. I want a haircut from Sunny Kim. Okay, here's a question. Would rewards involving food cause unhealthy habits? Great question. I didn't think about that. You as the parent would have to determine that one. I don't know whether I can answer that one as a universal uh, application. But yes, that is a great question to consider. Would certain rewards, especially like fatty or sweet foods, cause unhealthy habits? So yes, you be the one that determines how to manage food rewards in your household. Uh, yes, Pastor Harold, you do not know what you ask. Well, yeah, I live dangerously. uh, yes, teens want more time on their phone restrictions, and so they can earn more phone time with the tokens. Yes, that's a very strong candidate. Any other examples of rewards that you came up with that you think that your kids would like? Yep. Particular clothes, new clothes that your kids want, or new shoes. Here's a good one: video game gift cards. So they can earn their way towards the game that they want, as opposed to asking you, can I have it? Can I have it? Can I have it? Yep. Going to a Dodger game. Is there going to be baseball? Is there going to be any professional sports this year? I wonder whether people will actually go to a crowded event for the next like 9 months. I wonder about that. Great. Really good good ideas here. You know your kids best, and also they know themselves the best. So it's a way for them to really tell you what they want to earn towards. TV time, yes. Chuck E. Cheese, that's awesome. Some sort of a treat, some sort of toys, very good. Yes. So your kids are the experts of their own desires, and so they will be the ones that will tell you what they're really trying to earn for. And if you think that that is, appropriate and good, then you can assign the value to that. Okay, so if you show the next slide, this is the method. Sorry, before this is the method of earning daily tokens. There you go. Thank you. So what's going to happen is at bedtime, you give 1 token. Okay, just one. If the child has not broken any family rule and they completed all the chores on time. If you have multiple children, then you're going to give them their unique color-coded token. So 1 token at bedtime if they did not break any family rule and they did their chores by inspection time. If they did break a rule, well, there's no lecture, there's no angry tone, there's no nothing. They just don't receive a token. And yes, parents don't earn tokens because they don't get those, they don't get the reward. They don't get that, you know, hey, wife, can I have a Tesla? Well, that's not part of this program, okay? So if a child receives all 7 tokens, and if you start the count from Sunday through Saturday, then they receive 3 bonus tokens. They're basically accelerating their way to getting the reward that they want. So if they really want that Supreme t-shirt, if they really want to go to that one, again, I don't know whether we can go to concerts anytime soon, but if they really want concert tickets, whatever it is, this is their way to accelerate their way to do that. And you will need a calendar. I started to mention that. You're going to need maybe a separate calendar to keep track of these things. If they receive a daily token from day 1 of the month to the last day, even a short month like February, then they will receive 10 extra tokens for the month. So in essence, they can probably get about 50 tokens for the month. I have to remind you that you do need to be careful about assigning value because you don't want to have them earn their way to something really expensive in a short amount of time. You want to make sure that they really, really earn their keep, okay? So be very careful in doing the calculations. And then you assign a card amount next to the rule to show how many cards. Oh, sorry, that was already said before. So yes, 1 token per day, and if they did not break the rules or if they did all the chores by inspection time. All right, next slide. This is the family meeting. So hopefully by now you can really see that this is a system that is, you know, it's in plain view. Everyone understands, they're on the same page about it. They understand that not only do the kids have consequences, but the parents do as well. And there really is a way for them to be incentivized to do these things because they're earning their way towards something that they really, really want. So there's a lot of chances for buy-in for all members of the family. Now, here's the family meeting. You put a notebook in a central location, and then throughout the weeks, in between each family meeting, each member has a chance to write down what they want to discuss for the next meeting. So for example, you're saying, hey, I'm kind of confused about this one rule. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? Or, hey, I think that someone is using this as a loophole, or I think this needs to be altered or adjusted. That's great. Put that down in the book, and you guys will have a chance to discuss that at the next family meeting. If it's not written down, it won't be discussed. Okay, so this is putting the onus on each person to write it down when they think about it. And then at the family meeting, you discuss things that were done really, really well. Like in what ways you notice people really stepping up, in what ways that the system is working well. And then with dignity, you discuss complaints and confusions, you nominate adjustments, and it is the parents have the last say as far as whether there will be adjustments to the rules or not. You can determine when to schedule these meetings, and but it needs to be plain for everybody. And yes, so if a person does something that has not been written down yet, if they do something annoying, if they do something disruptive, you can ask them to please stop doing that, and then they can, you know, comply or not. And but there's not going to be a whole lot of eruption or lecturing done because that rule was not written down. It's like if you were pulled over by a cop over a 3-mile stretch of road where there was no speed limit posted, and the cop asks you, do you know how fast you're going? and you say, yeah, I was going 50. Like, do you know what the speed limit is? No, I don't, right? It wasn't written down anywhere. So if they give you a ticket for that, that doesn't seem fair because you had no idea that that was what the rule was. So in a like way, if you are giving a person a good habits card for something that wasn't even written down, then that's not going to be perceived as fair. So you want to make sure that fairness is something that is really that you're really striving for in this system. Okay, next slide, please. Great. All right, escalation. There's going to be times where kids are just having a really bad day, uh, and and just like parents will have a bad day, kids will have a bad day too, and they they might be totally defiant. No, I'm not going to take a card. Even if they know that they broke the rule, they're not going to take a card. Well, we want to provide some grace. And so, you know, I mentioned to give them kind of a cool down period. Well, if this defiance lasts longer than 24 hours, which is very rare, unless something is really going on in the kid's life, maybe something at school, something with their relationships, whatever, their friendships. But if they are in defiance for longer than 24 hours, that's what's called strike one, and they're going to be grounded for a week. And this is different than having to do a good habits card and having to miss out on something. So this includes missing anything extracurricular. This also includes missing work, like if they have a part-time job at Dairy Queen, you know, at Applebee's, at you know, anything that they have, an internship, they have to miss that. They have to miss sports practice. They must bear the consequence, such as getting fired from their internship, getting a poor grade, getting kicked off the team, getting missing their friend's birthday party. And then after the week, they have to complete all 50 cards. Now, mind you, this is very rare for someone to be this defiant for that long. But if it does happen, they need to know that that's not okay. And so that's going to be strike one. If they have a second instance of total defiance lasting longer than 24 hours, that's going to be strike two. And then they're grounded for 2 weeks, and then they have to do all 50 cards. And you'll realize that what's coming up within you as a parent, especially as predominantly this being a Asian American population, this might be like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do anything that harms my son's resume, their ability to get into an Ivy League school if they miss out on sports or whatever. But this is where you need to realize that if these behaviors you let them slide, you're basically setting them up to become someone who is an authority to fire. And even if they get into Harvard, they're still going to be an authority to fire. And so you're going to have to answer to God about that. So this is pretty serious stuff. This level of defiance is not okay. And you know, going back to the initial verse about with dignity, having the kids submit. Well, this is our way of really training them to submit. It's tough love, but we're not producing kids who feel that it is okay to defy their parental authority. If you show the next slide, this hardly ever happens in my experience, but it might happen sometime. But if this is a third offense, then it's strike three, and that's residential treatment. Most of the people that I've heard stories about when it comes to this level of defiance is Caucasian, and they, well, what I mean by that is the ones who get sent to residential treatment are Caucasian. I hardly ever hear about Asian kids going to residential treatment, but I feel like that should be an option. It just shows that the kid is that out of control. And this is not, this doesn't apply to kids who may have a mental health disorder. This, um, those types of kids might need a special type of intervention besides residential treatment. But these are just kids um, who don't respect authority. And yeah, they are on a path towards actually a clinical diagnosis of oppositional defiance or conduct disorder. That's bad news. So you don't have to blame yourself for these types of things. This is just the next logical step to effectively deal with out of control kids. So I don't suspect that a whole lot of you will be in this situation, but just in case some of you are in this situation, I don't think it'll ever get to strike three, but typically speaking, the first strike and the second strike interventions will be effective enough to teach them you're not messing around. Okay. All right, we're nearing the end here, and we'll have some time for questions. Okay, so next question. Sorry, yes, thank you. Defiance. What does defiance mean? Defiance, you could see it. Their body language, their eyes are defiant. They are truant. They're missing school. If they have counseling but they don't go to their counselor, if they're having promiscuous sex, if they're experimenting with alcohol and drugs, these are things that just are just not going to be healthy for them. So you want to be able to nip that in the bud. And so when I talked about the cooling down period, these kids could be having a bad day, and so you don't want to give the strikes out prematurely. You just want to make sure that you give them a good cooling down period within 24 hours. And if they end up saying, sorry dad, sorry mom, you know, I lost myself or whatever, but within the 24 hours, you reconcile, and you probably have to do all, you know, like a large amount of cards. You don't want to just let them go. You want to say, yes, that's not okay, but you know, by doing these cards, we have reconciled this, and we won't bring this up again. So give them that chance to cool down and to reconcile with you. You definitely don't want to be protecting your child from major offenses such as the ones listed here, because then you become an enabler, and at that time, they might need jail time. That's maybe what is most necessary for them to finally get it, that they can't keep doing those behaviors. Next slide, please.
What do you think I'm doing?
Okay, so you can definitely try to do these rules in different scenarios. You could do it at a therapist's office who understands this book. And that way the therapist is the one who introduces, and they get to be the bad cop. You can try to introduce it yourselves. The book is called Positive Parenting with a Plan. It's by Matthew Johnson. And so whatever way that you want to do it, give yourself a lot of slack, and make sure that you just start it, and you kind of amend as you go. I would recommend that you give it a practice run. Give it about a week where you take notice of what the rules are and when people are breaking them, and you say, sorry dad, or sorry mom, or sorry junior, you know, you broke rule number 5. And so you say, in this case, you would have had to pick 1 card, or you would have to pick 5 cards. And, you know, they can have fun taking a look at what the cards would be. And it's just a way for you to do a dry run before the real deal, which is the next week. And you just got to make sure that the rules are very clear for everyone to see. I know that's a lot of information to take in, and I try to go quickly just so we can cover all this ground, but I want to slow down now and allow for any sort of questions that have popped up along the way, because I want to make sure that you um, at least leave the seminar with a pretty good idea of what to do. So any questions that I can answer for you guys? Even if it's like going back to a particular slide and explaining that in more detail. Okay, one question is, what are some examples of rules for parents? Yeah, good question. So the basic premise of this system is that the rules, and rules are different than chores, right? The parents will have different chores than the kids will. But when it comes to rules, typically you want to go for the rules that are more about behavior. So it's like the ways that you speak. It's the ways that you ask questions, the ways that you uh, um, oh, here's another one. I know that sometimes like it could be about timeliness. It could be about punctuality. Another one has to do about is about driving. So sometimes a person drives really, really fast and it scares the other people in the family. Well, the rule that you can talk about in the family meeting is, can we have a rule that dad or mom needs to be within like 5 miles of the speed limit instead of 15 miles above the speed limit? And anything that really causes um, chaos or fear or insecurity or disruption or things in the family, those are good things to consider. And this is where the husband and wife can speak to one another and say, you know what, I do think that we need to apply this rule to us because I feel like we don't have a whole lot of accountability there, and I really want this to improve between the two of us. So um, there needs to be input between the parents, between the spouses, and as well as you can even ask the kids for input. Hey, is there anything that mom does or anything that dad does that causes you extra stress or extra whatever? And you can be the judge of whether that is a good rule to apply for you as a parent. Here is a question. Where do you write down the family rules and the chores? Right. So good question. You can just, create a Google Doc, a Word doc, and you post the family rules. You could laminate them. You could put it in a sheet protector. You could pin it to a bulletin board centrally. You could put it on a magnet on the fridge. You could put it in several places around the house. You could put it inside each bedroom. You be the the determiner of where you're going to put the rules are, where you put the rules, as long as they are visible for everyone to see. And that goes for the chores as well. Just making sure that it's posted in such a way that no one can say, oh, I didn't know where they were. Make them in plain sight. Here's another question. For these principles, are there any adjustments necessary for children in the foster program or that are adopted? Wow, what a great question. I don't know whether um, I'm definitely not an expert in foster program or adoption, but I will say that um, in the book, I kind of pared down what the book said in PowerPoint fashion, but these rules even apply for friends who come over to your house to play with your kids, whether it's slumber party or whatever. Like, these rules must be posted, and that any visitors to the house must abide by these rules. You can decide whether you want to do that as well, but the author of this system said no, that this is a household thing. And so I would assume that that the same things should apply to foster kids and adoptive kids, unless the foster kid or the adopted kid has some sort of a special need, like they're not capable of doing these things. But in general, you want to have I think you want to have a cohesive mentality when it comes to anyone living under this roof is going to be abiding by these universal rules, including the parents, including, you know, the foster kids. Let's see, another rule, or sorry, another question. All the rules and the rewards seem like a lot of work, the front end, yes. Can a family start with just a few rules and rewards and grow that gradually? Do you recommend this or not? I do, actually. That's a great question. This is a lot of stuff to jump into. And I think that if you were to start with, let's say, 5 core rules or 10 core rules that apply to everyone, that's a great place to start. And maybe just going towards one favorite reward that they want to strive for. I do think, though, that the good habits should still be 50 to fill out the whole deck of cards. But you will find that as you start with just 5 or 10 rules, that you will quickly find amendments to be made. And so you can write those in that central notebook, and you can discuss that at the next family meeting. But yes, I think that's a great idea to start with just a few to make it seem more manageable, and then you will learn as you go. Next question. I noticed that the numbers for family rules and good habits jump. Yes, family rules go from 10 to 17 habits. Are there other examples of those that were not presented? Yes, there are many other examples that I just chose the ones that seemed the most like a good variety. And there are many more in the book by Matthew Johnson. So if you want to buy the book, feel free to buy that for yourself. I feel that the book is good, but it could be a bit redundant. And sometimes when it does, when it's written that way, it could be kind of a mental roadblock. Like, oh, I don't know whether I want to, you know, read the entire thing. So I think what I posted in these slides is enough for you to really get a hang of the system. But yes, there are plenty more examples in the book that you can refer to. If my child observes an infraction while at a friend's house, should he or she do anything such as tell their parents? If what you're saying is you're observing like a sibling doing something, should they tell their parents? Oh, what a great question. I got to think about that one. I had not thought about that scenario. That's a really good one. You know what? I'm going to pose that to the rest of you. Maybe there's strength in numbers here. If let's say some of your kids are at a friend's house, and then, you know, one sibling breaks a rule that the parents don't see, what do you guys think? Is that fair for them to basically say? Because what I'm thinking right now is maybe that should be written in the rules too, that if a sibling observes another sibling breaking a rule out at a place where the parents aren't, then the rule is to tell the parents. Maybe that'll just do away with any sort of, like if they know that in advance, then they won't feel like they're snitching. In fact, they're just following the rules. So, but if any of you have ideas about that one, feel free to put that in the chat room as well, and I can go ahead and read those. That's a fantastic question. Another question. What are some basic parenting principles that we should keep in mind as we consider starting such a program? Okay, great question. The thing to keep in mind here is, and this is where things really start getting, they deteriorate, is when just on principle, the wife and the husband have different ideas about what parenting means, what disciplining means, what guiding means. I think that there needs to be a real sense of being on the same page, being on the same side. Even if you don't have exactly the same mentality, you should have roughly the same mentality. And this is really an exercise in humility and good, clear expression while not being a dominant force. Uh, your ability to negotiate, to take the best of what each person is presenting and to hybridize them in a way that is cohesive. And because the kids, they're the biggest beneficiaries of this. And if they see that the parents aren't on the same page, then that just causes a lot of discord. And so I would say that the basic parenting principle is that the two spouses should be on the same page. Now, in the instance that there's a single parent, and also when there's two separate households, that causes that leads to other scenarios. If it's a single parent, well, there's no one to really bounce it off of except for yourself. But you do need to make sure that your own way of dealing with the kids is fair, that it's perceived as fair, that you do a lot of communication about you being accountable to the rules as well. And when it comes to having separate households because of divorce, well, it's up to you. Like, you cannot force your ex-spouse to do the same rules in their household as you, but you can invite them to. If you have a decent enough relationship with your ex-spouse, then you can say, hey, this is a book and a system that I recently learned about, and I really want to implement this with our kid. I'm wondering whether you would take a look and see whether this is something that you want to apply as well, and give them that choice. If they say no, then you're just going to have to explain to your kids that both households will have different rules, and that is confusing, but that's just the way that it needs to be right now until maybe sometime in the future where both parents are in alignment with that. But definitely I would invite your ex-spouse to be on the same page with you. And if they do agree, oh, that is a great thing. Okay. Someone said, I missed the intro. Could you do a quick summary of how to introduce or the general framework? Okay, I might get back to this one as I look at a few other questions here. Regarding an only child, shouldn't integrity play a part in the character of the child and possibly tell the truth? I agree, yeah. I think that is a good thing to consider, is that, as we're trying to teach the kids about integrity, that overrides snitching. And so that should be explained in the rule itself, that if they are, well, okay, regarding only child, if they, you could say something like this: if you tell the truth, you will do the card and there will be no mention of it. However, if you don't tell the truth and I find that you lied about it, you get 50 cards. You could choose between the two of them, and that way the kid realizes, okay, what's better, actually going ahead and getting the one card over with, or is it about doing the 50 cards? So you can choose about how to do that. But yes, I agree that this is a good way to teach them about integrity. Let's see here. What would be a better way for a child to freely talk about feelings and wrongdoings? Yeah, and I think this goes back to how the parents can monitor themselves. Like, if they're really going to give the kids a safe place to share about their wrongdoings, then how the parents manage that should not be in the form of, you know, oh, like no abusive language, no outbursts, no nothing, but just basically saying, I'm very grateful that you showed the integrity to tell me about these things, or any sort of feelings that you want to talk to me about are safe with me. And if you, the parent, have a hard time dealing with a variety of feelings, then, you know, it might be you who might need to do some personal work around that, or you might need to have to draw some cards if you're going to respond in these ways that are harmful to the kid, or indirectly teaches them that um, that you're not a safe person to share their feelings about, or share their feelings to. Okay, let's see. Here's another question. Okay, so before I forget, I'm going to go back to that one question about missing the intro. Could you do a quick summary of how to introduce this? Well, you can introduce by saying, I know that the ways that we've been doing things so far has not been super effective. I lose my temper, mom or dad loses their temper. Um, the behaviors that are not okay keep repeating themselves. So this is a new system that will hopefully provide some structure for all of us to get on the same page. I know that you, as the child, do not like when mom or dad nags or lectures or does outbursts. So this is a way for us to get better, but also for a way for, you know, for us to treat you with dignity and for you to learn godly submission. So that could be just a clear, simple way to introduce the idea. And you know, they might not have buy-in, and that's okay. You could just say, you know, let's just see how the test run goes. Let's implement this for about a month and see how it goes, and we'll have a next family meeting and adjust on the fly. But essentially, you as the parents are going to have the final say. So you can try to frame it in that way. Here's another question. Does this system interfere with the child's ability to understand grace? Does this interfere with the child's ability to understand grace? Okay, so if I'm understanding this question correctly, grace being like letting the behavior go without a consequence. Well, in my mind, they're different. I think this is a way to have parents do what they are called to do, which is to you know, instruct kids in the Lord and to have them learn godly submission, but in a way that does not provoke them, in a way that actually makes them more appreciative of rules and more appreciative of order in the world. So I think grace can be abused when I think the danger of going about it in a letting them off the hook is that we can enable behaviors that that essentially cause more disruption and destruction. So I don't know whether I'm really answering that question well, but that's just like the initial thoughts that came to my mind. I don't know whether these are necessarily related. I think that we can, with a grace-filled attitude, implement this structure, because I think the yelling on one extreme and the not doing anything about the behaviors on the other extreme are not really helpful for the child. Yeah, is all behavior seen through the lens of good works and consequences? That was the kind of the addendum to that first question. I don't know whether I can make that blanket statement. But I do think that, okay, so I think what you're saying is, is this like works-based righteousness, that kind of thing? And I think they are different. Um, I think that when we are dealing with the real world, we understand that uh, when we have certain um, uh, ways of dealing with our friends or with our coworkers or with our bosses, that there are going to be consequences. I think we do reap what we sow. But when it comes to the grace that God gives to us in Christ, that is so different than like what's happening there is that God's love and favor for us does not change. However, he will discipline us in ways that will help us uh, move away from destructive habits to more healthy habits. So we want to be able to, this is a really great question. Want to be able to explain to the kids that when you have to draw a card, this has nothing to do with whether we have favor for you or not. This has nothing to do with whether you are secure in our family or not. Even if we have to send you to a residential treatment facility, this has nothing to do with whether we have favor for you or not. In fact, this is our way of telling you we love you so much that we don't want you to ruin your life. And this is a level of treatment that we think that you need in order to, not being destructive to yourself and to other people. So we do want to be careful about saying that the favor that we have for people is very different than the kind of consequences that are necessary for these behaviors to not be destructive anymore to our relationships or to our society. Um, okay, what do you say when your child says that his friends don't have these rules? What do you say when? Oh, yes. Be very, very validating. Be very, very empathetic. Say, yes, I know. And you can ask them, how do you feel about that? And they can say, they might be saying something like, well, I think it's unfair. I think it's embarrassing, or it's, these kind of things. And you say, yeah, actually, I see your point. I see why you would think that way, because you're the only one who has this, and they might look at you funny. And if I were in your position, I might be a little bit embarrassed too. However, mom and dad still feel that this is something that our family needs. We have experienced a lot of confusion and a lot of strong negative emotions, and we feel that this is the best way for our family um, to be more cohesive, to increase our love and respect for one another. And I hope that you can understand both sides, that on one hand, it is embarrassing to be the only one amongst your friends to be doing this, but at the same time, this could be a really helpful thing for our family. So make room for them to have that feeling, acknowledge it, validate it, and say, we still have the last word. And we hope that over time, you will see that this is something that you're glad that you started with us. You definitely don't want to shut those feelings down. You want to be able to appreciate them saying that to you, and uh, that way at least they feel heard. They don't feel like you are minimizing what they're saying, that you are fully acknowledging that and validating it, and still making this decision based upon all the information that was given to you. Okay, let's see. Any other questions that I missed? Okay, to the person who asked about the grace, said that was a good answer. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad I could answer that for you in a way that was satisfying. Anything else? Okay. Well, it seems like the questions died down. You can always email me, roy@newlegacycounseling.com. Um, Let me go ahead and write this down to everyone. roy@newlegacycounseling.com. That is my email address that you can, if you have any further questions. Pastor Jimmy, would you want to take it from here?
Yes. Well, Roy, thank you so much for sharing this. This is my second time hearing it and thinking through it. And having two teenagers, I'm trying to think of ways that we could really implement this. And the other important part was, since I heard this and last time my wife wasn't able to, be here together.
Yeah.
And now we try to have a conversation now, and we'll think about some ways we could try to implement this at home.
Yeah.
But Roy, so much for your time. Thank you for kind of downsizing into bite-sized chunks a book that, in your own words, is a little bit repetitive. And we also just want to thank all the families and parents and couples who joined us for today. I hope it was helpful. You have the slides with you. If you didn't get a slide, please email the office, and our Sarah Jew will forward you the slides that we used today so that you could review. And if you have questions that maybe you think of later on, Roy is kind enough to give us his email so we could interact with him and ask him further questions. But to wrap up our time today, I just wanted to thank Roy. I also want to thank David Chin, who's been kind of our technical facilitator for this time. Thank you, Dave, for setting this up as well as helping us run this. Thank you, Sarah Jew, for also sending out all the emails and setting up our Zoom meeting. I'm going to close this with a time of prayer, and I'm just going to pray for all of us. So if you bow your head with me, I'm going to wrap up our time together. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this time this morning. As we're at stay at home during the coronavirus pandemic, and as we're at home, I know that many of us are both filled with some concern, some tension and fear, as well as a continual desire to grow, have faith and trust in you. We pray that you would help us to continue to be in community, help us to be patient with each other, as that's sometimes not an easy thing to find when we're confined together for long periods of time. And we're also just thankful that we're able to think through this morning together about some important parenting principles and some ways and tools that we don't need to nag or be repetitive or be overbearing at times as parents to our kids. Unbeknownst to ourselves, sometimes we do exasperate them. Sometimes we do test their patience and maybe even come across as hypocritical or unfair. I pray that you would help us more than anything to really help our children and as families to be well balanced, help us to think together. And thank you so much for even the idea of family meetings where we can have a time to voice our questions and our thoughts together. Lord, I pray that this would be a tool that honors the truth that your word calls us to as mothers and fathers, to not exasperate our kids, but to raise them up in the Lord. And Lord, we also pray that you would help us as a family to really keep your truth and your principles at the center of our hearts. As we wrap up this time, we pray for Roy and his ministry, his work as a counselor. We pray that you would bless him, to bless many other families. And we thank you for, most of all, Christ at the center of all these things, who makes every day worthwhile. Thanking you once again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Roy, have a great afternoon with your family.